Nicolasa Rebollo Quintana, viuda de Garcia, born September 10th, 1930, passed May 10th, 2024. What can I say about Mom? Oh, I could tell you tons of stories, folks, and I will someday. Mom was born in an agricultural village, Ixtlahuaca, Estado de Mexico, which means, in the native language of Nahuatl, the plains with no trees in the state of Mexico. Mexico. We don't know much about her life other than what she had shared with us, but I got a sense from what she shared with me that she was a rambunctious little girl. And if any of you have spent time with her and you close your eyes, you can see her running and jumping and yelling and pointing and reaching for tree limbs and jumping creek beds and all sorts of travesuras, like she would say. And she spent a lot of time with her mom, which I think they had a very special bond. Her mother, Lucina Quintana, must have been a beautiful woman. Mom didn't keep any pictures of her. They were lost when she passed away, when my grandmother passed away. I never met my grandmother. None of us met our grandmother, Lucina Quintana. Lucina Quintana died, I believe, January 6, 1940. So Mom was 10. Pardon me, she was 9. She hadn't reached 10 yet. Mom said everything was good, life was good, until her mother died. Can you imagine losing your mom at such a tender age of 9? That's where Mom's character comes from. Because our grandfather, her father, Sebastián Rebollo, must have taken it really hard and didn't know how to deal with it. And so he dealt with it by abusing Mom. And from what Mom says, he beat her. He had no patience for her. He might have even blamed her for her death. And so Mom had to run away after some time, and she was taken in by our aunt, her aunt, who was the sister of our grandfather. And her name we know her as Tia Regina, who lived in Toluca, also in the state of Mexico. And so Mom had a very fond, deep, loyal relationship with Tia Regina and her cousins. Mom eventually moved to Mexico City, looking for employment, looking for opportunity. She never went to school. She never attended school. She worked in the fields. She played in the fields. Then she took care of her siblings. And then she ran away to be safe. And then she made her way to Mexico City. I imagine that she made her way to Mexico City around the age of 16 or 17. There she worked in many places, but the story that she recounted to me many times was that she arrived to an area called Las Lomas de Chapultepec, which is like the Beverly Hills of Mexico City. Big houses, historic homes, a lot of wealth. And while she was there looking for work, she met somebody on the street. And if anybody, and if any of you guys know me, I'm the same way. I just meet people on the street, and I will just spark a conversation. And if I sense they're good people, you know, we'll become acquaintances. Not always friends, acquaintances, but we have a good exchange. And I believe that's what Mom did. So she met this woman that was probably selling food at a food stall. And Mom said that she was looking for work, and the lady said, "Oh, I think I know somebody that's looking for help. What do you do?" And blah blah blah. And she said, "Yeah, okay, sure. Let's go over to this house, and we will get you some work." And so this woman presented my mom to the homeowner, and she presented my mom as her niece. And I can just imagine the woman would say, you know, like, "Don't say nothing, don't, quiet, okay." "Yeah, my niece, this is my niece, okay, and this is what she can do, and you know, I vouch for her." Now, you have to really come across as somebody with really good character in order for somebody out of the blue to vouch for you. And that speaks volumes of who my mom is and was back then and all her life. She received employment at this house. And while she was working at this home, she met our father. And I asked Mom many times. We would sit watching television, and I would sit on her chair, comfort chair in her bedroom, and she'd be laying on the bed. And out of the blue, I would just ask her, because I was curious. I'd ask her, "Mom, how did Dad first approach you, or why, and why did you, you know, what was the attraction, and where did he take you on the first date, and how did he treat you?" And she told me, "You know what, I like the way he spoke to me." Which means, and we know this, our family know this, we know that my father has a very gentle manner. He's a distinguished gentleman. I'm actually wearing his shirt right now. Because if there's anybody that I would like to be like or emulate, it would be my father. So he was kind to my mom, and that was something that she needed. That was something that she looked for. After having a very rough, probably 7-8 years after her mom's death. And I'm sure my dad was sweet to her, because that's my dad's nature. That was his nature. Yes, as kids, we didn't see that all the time. What we saw was a father, you know, a disciplinarian. And sometimes we didn't see him because he was busy working. And so we spent a lot of time, some of us spent a lot more time with Mom than Dad. But when they first met each other, I can imagine there must have been an aura of love, passion, and cat and mouse type of play, because my mom was not gonna just give herself away. She even said that to me. She's like, she played hard to get. All right, so yeah, Mom said she played hard to get, and she gave him a little bit of a hard time, you know, and that's Mom's nature too. So you have two different natures, a lot of contrast there, and I think that's what made them work, because they balanced each other out. So they ended up getting married early 50s, and they looked to get new employment after they left their current job. And they looked in the newspaper and they found an ad that said, family looking for domestic help at a vacation rental in Acapulco. And interviews were being held in Mexico City. So you have to imagine kind of like an Airbnb home back in the 1950s, early 50s, all the way down in Acapulco. And my parents lived in Mexico City, and they already had one child, my oldest brother. Mom always said that the reason that she left the village to go to Mexico City, there's some details there that are kind of mixed up, but she always stated that the main reason she wanted to improve life once she got married to Dad and she had the first child was because she wanted our oldest brother, Jose Manuel, to do better in school, because she said that she owned a tortilla making company, handmade tortillas, probably made 30 kilos of tortillas a day. So you figure probably like, I don't know, several hundred or 1,000 tortillas a day. And that Jose Manuel, when he would go to school, would not go to school. He'd go end up playing in the creek with some friends. And some little girl one day said to Mom, Manolo no fue a la escuela. Manolo está jugando con los niños en el arroyo. And my mom, when she found out that the little girl had told her that Jose Manuel was playing in the creek with his little friends instead of going to school, she decided that they needed to get out of that place there and find a new place to live, to better his life, because she wanted more for her kids. And that makes sense, because maybe she didn't have a lot. So anyway, so the three of them end up going to Acapulco. And my dad, this is what my mom says, my dad said, we can't go to that interview. It says right there, a couple, husband and wife, or a couple, and no kids. And Mom said, don't worry about it. We're going to go there and we're going to show them what we can do. And if they say no, then we haven't lost anything, really. We're going to go find out. So that's my mom's character. She's like gonna try, no matter what. She's gonna try to make an improvement. And Dad was probably more, laid back. Okay, so when they went to the interview and they said they had a kid, but they talked to the people, they said, okay, well, I'll tell you what, we're gonna give you a chance. Go down there for a week or two and see what you can do with the kid, and if it works out, then we'll give you full-time employment. So they went to Acapulco, and of course it worked out, because they weren't gonna go down there and half-ass it. They were gonna make sure that they got the job. They were gonna do what needed to be done. So they ended up working at this house in Acapulco for several years. And then another brother was born, George, and a sister, Grace, and a brother, Miguel, and another brother, Ruben. And 2 other siblings were born. I don't know where those other 2 siblings are buried or what their names are. And there might have even been 3, because on official documents, it shows that Mom had, it shows the number of pregnancies she had. So that's a question that has never been fully answered. So I may have 2 siblings that have passed away at infancy, and I have another brother that has passed away recently, a year ago. George passed away. So while they were down there in Acapulco, I believe the 3 or 4 of my oldest siblings, Jose Manuel, went to private school. So my parents worked and did everything they could to make sure that my siblings got the best education possible. So they went to a private school, La Salle, which is a well-known private school in Mexico. And as most parents know, putting a child in private school requires significant amount of funds. So it was a sacrifice that they took on, but they did it because they wanted to make sure that their children got a good education and went far in life. So the first 4 siblings, possibly only 3, but I believe it's 4, went to private school. Then when the house was about to get sold, or let's call it the Airbnb, the vacation rental in Acapulco was sold, my parents had to seek other employment. So my mom, this is what she tells me, she wrote letters to folks that had already stayed there from the US and Canada and asked them for help, for employment. She says to me that the main reason she wanted to come to the United States, or to go to the United States, was because she wanted my eldest sibling, Jose Manuel. In fact, she prayed to go to the United States so that he could get a better education, learn English, and continue his advanced education. That was the main reason she wanted to come to the United States, because they could have gone to work at another vacation home in Acapulco or Mexico City or anywhere else in those 2 main communities, which would have given them the financial opportunity. Acapulco was known as the Mexican Riviera at that time and was a very wealthy resort, very popular resort all the way up until the very early 80s. And Mexico City has always been a cosmopolitan city where they could have done really well working the way they did. But my mom prayed, and she prayed. She said she wanted Jose Manuel to come to the United States to learn English. That's one of the many stories that she shared. So there was a family, the Wiederspiel family from the Catskill Mountains, furniture store owners that had spent time in Acapulco, and I think they were there when they actually offered my parents a job back in the Catskill Mountains in Spokane, New York. And my parents decided to take their offer. And so my mom, dad, 5 siblings, and an additional young girl, because they didn't have enough kids, they decided to pick up another one, that her mother was not well. I don't know if it was a psychological thing or whatever, but couldn't take care of this young woman. She was a young teenager. So the 6 of them, the 8 of them, came to the United States, and I was in the oven. So I always say that I was well made in Mexico, born in the United States. I was carry-on luggage. I was born a month after they arrived to the United States. And so Mom led the way, pretty much. But as a team, they did everything they could for their family. As kids, we see it a different way. I saw it a different way. But what I learned over the past few years, spending so much time with Mom in her environment, in her home, in her space, at a different time in our lives, I learned to appreciate many, many things about her. I would ask her questions every day about all sorts of things that popped into my mind. Where did Dad take you on your first date? And she would tell me. She remembers the theater that they went to, that he took her out to a movie. Why did you want to date Dad? Because he was kind to me. He made me laugh. I would have liked to have asked Dad a lot of these questions, because I'm a guy. I'm attracted to a woman. What did my father find attractive in a woman? Now, I'll be honest with you. Mom is a beautiful woman. I didn't see that as a youth. I saw it later as she aged. When I looked at her, when I would sit with her at the supper table, I imagined my father sitting there, and they would pray after mom made tortillas or cooked. And I'm talking early 2000s, late 1990s, because that's the time that my parents would have been here together in Mexico. And when I looked at mom, what I saw was strength and resilience and a beautiful smile and profound cheekbones and the softest hands I've ever touched. Many of you, I'm sure, see and saw that in my photographs. And of course, if you saw that personally, then you know what I'm talking about. My mom is a brave woman, the most courageous woman I've ever met. And I don't know where she got that courage from, but I can only imagine it was from her upbringing, those beatings, living with nothing or little, but knowing that somebody always has it worse. And she wasn't going to be a victim anymore. She was going to be a leader. And she was going to be an example. And she was going to live life on her terms. She made a lot of mistakes. She knows that. We know that. But that's the contrast. Because none of us don't walk this earth without making mistakes. It was hard for her to admit some of her mistakes. And there are some things that troubled her all the way to the very end. Because of her hard life, she seeked something beyond what was here on the earth. And she seeked out different religions and different ways of thought, and she found a church, a religion that suited her. And that changed all of our lives, very much so. And many of us went different paths. Many of us haven't dealt with that yet. And mom realized over the past few years that there was something that was not right. But she didn't waver in her faith. I believe that you can have faith and be led by your faith and do the best that you know and the best that you think and still make errors in judgment. But as a leader, sometimes when you make a decision, you got to stand by it. You can't waver unless you realize I'm on the wrong path. Mom chose her path, and it served her well most of the times. And I believe that her faith gave her strength, and that's why she was able to survive and thrive almost 2 decades after my dad's passing. Because very few people could handle that. Many people would fall apart, break down, shrink, but not mom. So her faith is what helped her live since my dad's passing. And we can't take that away from her. Although we can learn from it and try to do the right thing and the best thing forward. Mom always liked to read letters. She typed a lot of letters. She hand wrote a lot of letters over her time. She didn't have an education, but she learned how to write and how to type on her own. Maybe she had some help from some, you know, some friends, but pretty much she self-taught herself. And that was her way of communicating with people for many, many, many years, decades. So I have letters that I have from her, from Dad. I've seen some letters, correspondence between her and her sisters, or sister, one sister, and some friends of hers. And I will share some of those later on down the road. I may read those later on. But right now, we're about to start the burial part of this ceremony. And although there are not bands and there's not balloons and there's not a lot of people here, that's how Mom lived her life. She wasn't about fanciness and displays, big displays. She always said, if you want to spend time with somebody, do it while they're alive. Don't race till it's too late, when you're racing to their burial and then saying beautiful words and throwing flowers and, crying and all that stuff. She goes, what? That's for you. That's for the living. I'm gone. Don't cry for me. There's a song, and I'll share it later. Beautiful song. I love it. And it says, when I'm gone, don't cry for me. Laugh with me while I'm alive. And I believe that too. And that's why I'm here right now as part of this and sharing this with you, because I want folks to see that Mom was a humble person. And the folks that visited her, wrote letters to her, shared time with her, you have a gift that you're going to carry now for the rest of your life. Because being with someone as profound and with so much character and personality and uniqueness as Mom, to be around a sage like her, you can only learn something. And you're going to take something away with you. And so all of you now who have followed her journey, and her children, my brothers, my siblings, take that gift and continue to spread that gift like Mom and Dad did. That's the only way we're going to honor our parents, is by what we do now. And that's how Mom would have wanted it. And we all have our faith, and we all have our beliefs. And I believe that they are within us, and we are them and they are us. And we take them right here. They're not gone. Their body is gone, but their spirit, their essence is right here. So carry that with you. Hold on to that. And if there's any time that you ever find yourself lost or in despair or questioning things, just say, Mom and Dad went through this, and they did this, and they accomplished this, and they learned this, and they created this. Whatever you're going through is nothing, because Mom went through all the diseases and she went through the Depression, the World Wars. Sure, Mexico was not in the World Wars as far as I know. They may have contributed it financially or something like that, or with materials, because Mexico has a lot of resources. So those resources were taken from the people, and things were very expensive back then. So if when we used to eat right here with Mom right now, we would cook. We would always laugh every day. She would always say, as long as you have some tortillas, you're good. And as long as you have some tortillas and a little salsa or a little fresh sauce, life is good. And as long as you have a little bit of tortillas and some fresh salsa and maybe some beans, life is great. And so, that's the attitude, So mom went through all those things. Dad went through all those things. They had measles, they had mumps, they had rubella, they had whooping cough. In fact, mom told me that she was cured, I believe, from the whooping cough from donkey's milk. Okay, and then I researched that, and yes, donkey's milk has an enzyme or a protein that will alleviate the symptoms of it's either pertussis or whooping cough. So that's the strength there, man, and we carry that in us. Not all of us are warriors. Not all of us are champion taekwondo boxers or all that stuff. But we all have a certain strength. And the thing is you need to find that strength in you. You need to go into yourself and find that. That's my faith. It's right here. It's all right here, dude. It's all right here. So folks, siblings, friends of my parents, people that knew my parents, today is not a sad day. Today is a day of reflection. And it's a step. It's a part of life. And we are so fortunate, we are so blessed to be the offspring of these two people, Nicolasa Rebollo Quintana, viuda de Garcia, Roman Garcia Amador. Never forget where you came from. Learn from these people and learn from other people like them. Follow good examples and then lead by example yourself. And that, folks, is my tribute to Mom. The most courageous, bravest woman I've ever known. A beautiful woman, a mother, a sister, a daughter, a niece, an aunt, cousin,